Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, whenever you happen to be tuning in. My name is Marty O'Shea, Superintendent of Schools here in Longmeadow Public Schools, and pleased to bring another edition of the Superintendent's Corner. Especially pleased today to introduce a person who is becoming a familiar face throughout the community, and that is Ananda Lennox. Ananda serves as the director of the Close Community Coalition here, and we're excited to talk to the community about the important work that Close does to build resilient young people and encourage healthy, responsible decision making, and ultimately work towards preventing substance use in Longmeadow. So welcome, Ananda Lennox, director of the Close Community Coalition. So
thank you.
We're so happy to have you. The Close Community has been with us since part of the community since about 2018. You're new to the organization, but you bring a ton of experience. So talk to us a little bit about your background, and then maybe we can talk about the important work that Close does.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Right.
And thank you for having me. So yeah, I've been doing this work for about 12 years now. It wasn't something I planned on. I'd actually gone back to get a master's after I started my family to go to be a school counselor. And when that didn't quite pan out, I had a friend who said, why don't you consider working for the Northampton Prevention Coalition, because I know that you're really into youth development and engagement and mentoring, and they have this part-time position that you might really like. So I got into it and I'm like, what is prevention? And then I quickly learned and fell in love with it. So yeah, I worked there for about 7 years, started as a youth engagement and parenting engagement coordinator, and then became their coordinator, and then was their interim director when our funding had run out and a lot of the staff had left. So, and then I moved on to West Springfield, and then I joined Close just in February. And I'm really excited to be here, and I'm very familiar with like the drug-free communities grant cycle, how to do all that type of reporting. And I find that being in a new community always reinvigorates the work for me, because a lot of the principles we promote are the same, but each community has a different flavor, different values, and getting to know them is a big part of the excitement of starting here.
Yeah. And I've had an opportunity to see you at so many school and community events since you joined us in February. Recently saw you at the high school awards assembly, so Ananda has really thrown herself into the Longmeadow community and gotten to know us, and we've gotten to know Ananda. And really impressed how you've been able to kind of pick up the ball and build on a foundation of success. So tell, for folks who may not be familiar with the Close Community Coalition and the Drug-Free Communities grant that we're proud to be a recipient of, can you tell us a little bit about those two things?
Sure, yeah. So the Drug-Free Communities grant is a federal grant, and the program came to be because what they realized with some smaller funding strategies is that local prevention efforts were actually really impactful. So like, if anybody's seen a PSA on TV, you know, there are messages that come out from like the National Institutes of Health and stuff like that, but a lot of times they might be focusing on something that isn't actually impacting your community. Like let's say they're doing something on methamphetamines, and luckily we've been fortunate on the East Coast to not have that be a big issue, but it had been in the Midwest part of the country. So what the Drug-Free Community Grant does is it provides just enough funding to hire a staff person or two, and then they have a structure that they ask you to create that helps make it so that there's this chance for sustainability and for community buy-in. So for example, I'm right now the sole staff person, but we have a steering committee that is comprised of 12 different sector reps. And when we say sector reps, what we mean is, like, we definitely want to have a substance use prevention coalition that involves parents. So that's one of our sectors. We definitely want to have youth involved. You can't solve a problem that infects part of your population without involving that population. And then we also include law enforcement, media, people in the medical profession, schools, and then, various other people that I won't go into elaborate detail on.
Yeah.
But we do that, and I think when Close was started back in 2018, it was this really nice team effort between yourself, the superintendent of schools, Carl Mazzaferro, who was the chief at the time of the police department,
captain,
and then Shelley Warren, who is your substance abuse like response coordinator here, and also a licensed counselor.
Yeah.
So that group of people got together and said, we're noticing that the opioid epidemic is starting to impact Longmeadow and the surrounding areas, and we want to be proactive about keeping our community safe. And I think, knock on wood, Longmeadow has done a really good job keeping the youth of your community really safe. But that funding came on board. It was for a 5-year grant for $125,000.
Yep.
And then they reapplied and got 6 through 10 as well. With the current administration, we're not sure if round 3 will be released, but we're hopeful.
Yeah.
And so what that looks like as an overall plan is we work, all of these different key stakeholders work together to promote the mission, which is of reducing and delaying youth substance use and promoting pro-social activities. So one of the nice things about coming on board with Longmeadow, having done this for 12 years, and also possibly too, since prevention has been promoted for longer and longer, I think people are more accepting of like the practices. But Longmeadow, since I've come on board, you definitely have a commitment to SEL education.
Yeah.
You already have a lot of people that come in and talk to youth about fentanyl prevention and marijuana, and you have health education. I think it goes all the way down until about 5th grade. So you have a lot of wonderful things in place already, which makes my work easier. So what I do as a coalition leader is just make sure that our community as a whole, not just the schools, are taking this as part of their mission.
Yeah.
So that would mean when I work with law enforcement, we're doing alcohol compliance checks to make sure that nobody is selling to underage, clients, that we're working with Enfield, Connecticut with vape devices, because sometimes our youth go across the border to buy them there, and really working with parents to try to promote healthy choices, such as not hosting underage parties, because I think that there's pressure sometimes on parents to think, my kid might do this anyhow, so how can I make it safer? And we just know that when alcohol is involved with underage people, it's really hard to keep bad things from happening. Yeah. So we try to do that work.
I want to build on a couple of things you mentioned. First of all, the federal grant, $125,000 a year.
Yeah.
We had an initial 5-year allocation, and now we've re-upped. We reapplied and got a second 5 years. And so we should all be very proud of that. That was a competitive, rigorous grant that we pursued, and I think it's provided some important resources and programming here in Longmeadow over the last 7 years or so, 8 years. And so wanted to underscore that. The close community coalition with the various sector representatives, I've had an opportunity to be part of several of those meetings, and to see youth serving agencies come together with faith-based agencies and the schools and the police and other community partners, it really creates some powerful momentum. So I'm really grateful to the close community and you for kind of sustaining that energy and getting the right people in the room to have the right conversations. And I do think, just to underscore a couple other things, is sort of the connection between, and you could build on this, but the connection between the close community work and the work of our schools. You mentioned the commitment to SEL, and again, I think that's worth sort of highlighting, because our belief has long been that if we can encourage students to manage themselves, to make responsible, healthy decisions, that we're building their capacity to not ultimately get involved in substances. So that really is an important foundation. So really, while a lot of the substance use lessons that we have in schools sort of explicitly start in health classes, really you're building a foundation from the earliest ages. If you can encourage kids to be socially aware and make responsible decisions, you're building their capacity, you're helping them avoid riskier decisions down the road. So SEL is really an important sort of foundational practice in the world of substance use prevention education. So I don't know if that's something you can build on at all.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm really excited to bring to this community that I've done in other communities is I'm starting a peer-to-peer education program that's going to involve having high school students lead lessons for 5th and 6th graders on these things that you're talking about. So like on the one hand, we want to address things like nicotine addiction, because we just know that, I know this is an antiquated term, but nicotine is really a gateway drug. Like nicotine is one of those drugs that kind of primes your brain to be susceptible to addiction to other substances that you can add. But in addition to that, what we really want to teach students about, especially at these younger ages, is like, how do you say no to a friend? Like, how do you do that? How do you pick a friend? Like, especially if your pool of friend choices is maybe the 20 kids in your class. What we hear from students over and over again is that if you want to be successful in life, a lot of it has to do with who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
So what I'm hoping to do with these peer educators is build on what Longmeadow is already doing as far as like trying to build up self-esteem and mindfulness and learning how to control your emotions and also how much space you might take up in a room and how to be like a social chameleon. Like when you're in the library, you got to be quiet. When you're on the basketball field, you can be loud. And so I'm really excited to have older students helping to model that with the younger students. And so what I see my role in when it comes with partnering with the school is in a lot of ways, because you have so many good things set up already, is amplifying what you already do and then having it delivered from a multitude of voices so that the students are getting the same message, not only from their parents and their counselors and their teachers, but also their older peers who they already see as rock stars. And I just think it really helps them to stay on the right track.
And as part of that, I know you work closely with Shelley Warren. Shelley Warren, whose office is here in the high school, serves as our substance use response coordinator, and we're really fortunate to have Shelley. She's a gift. She's a treasure for the town of Longmeadow, and has long built up a lot of the programming that we have here on a pre-K to 12 basis around substance use prevention education, and so much of that, there's so much of the explicit instruction that happens in health classes in grades 5 through 12, and so grateful that we've been able to build up that programming over the years, and some explicit instruction on wellness and drug and alcohol education, and so we're grateful of the partnership that you and Shelley have. You make a dynamic duo, and we're really,
I'm a big fan.
I think Longmeadow ought to be very proud to have both of you in the roles that you're in, because you bring a lot of energy and expertise and in this area, so appreciate that. So to go back to the close community, there has been a foundation of success that you've been able to build on. Can you talk a little bit about some of the ongoing initiatives? I know you have some show and tell.
I have a lot of show and tell
materials here for us. So some of the ongoing projects or future initiatives that you're hoping to lead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we look at this for a second through the lens of substance use prevention explicitly, like looking at substances that teens are most often exposed to, our grant funds us to, not only do social emotional work and the things that are the underpinnings of a healthy adolescence, but we also, the funding, we look at nicotine, because as we said, that's a gateway drug. We look at marijuana or THC, because that is also something that kids get exposed to. Alcohol, a perennial favorite. And then we do a bit of education around fentanyl, just because of the opioid crisis. And we're fortunate that most youth at the ages that we serve, like K through 12, generally aren't exposed, but accidental poisonings do happen. So what we have going on right now is a combination of community education, youth education, and parent outreach, and they are focused on these different substances. So right now, if you've been driving around,
I'll assist for you.
You might have seen a sign like this.
All right.
This is a continuation of what CLOS has started several years ago, and this is what we call the Social Host campaign. And this is designed to remind parents and caregivers that it's just really not safe to serve alcohol at underage parties, because what I think a lot of us forget is that no matter how careful you try to be around situations like this, everybody makes different decisions once they start drinking.
Yeah.
So like your sober teen will be like, I'll call you for a ride home, don't worry about it, I'm not going to do this. But then once they have a few drinks, they start making choices that aren't really the best and the healthiest for them. So this we have around, we've distributed about 70 signs at this point.
Excellent.
I'm
Yeah.
hoping to make a community map soon.
Yeah.
And this is just to remind parents that it's important to prevent underage drinking, especially in your home. And then if you're not familiar with the social host law, this is a liability law that just can put you in a lot of financial and legal hardship even if unbeknownst to you there was drinking in your home, you're considered the host and it can cause problems for you.
And if anyone is interested in having one of these
They can
on their
still
lawn,
have
they
one.
can,
Yep.
all right.
We're going to do it through the end of June.
All right.
And then we like to do wraparound messaging. So we also have a postcard, and this has more details than a lawn sign can provide about what the social host law is. And we also like to include statistics that just remind parents that they're already doing a great job. So like right now, we have a stat that says 91% of Longmeadow parents don't allow teen drinking in their homes.
Yeah.
So it's like most of everybody is doing exactly as they should, and there's like a small percentage that don't.
There's sort of this, among teenagers especially, there's this sense that, well, everybody's doing it.
Yes.
The truth is, when you really look at the stats,
Yeah.
most aren't.
Right.
And I think what I've learned from the close community and from Shelley and yourself is that these social norms campaigns can be very powerful and can give kids the comfort to make a good decision, the right decision. So,
right.
yeah,
I know, because I think it's really hard. If you, like, let's say you're a junior and your 10 closest friends are drinking, then if somebody were to ask you, like, do most kids drink? You're going to say yes, because your cohort does. But when you look at the stats, so we do a climate survey every year with Shelley Warren's partnership, and what we ask students is, like, what kind of substances have they used? And we find around, 40% of seniors will say that they've had alcohol. But that's still the minority, and that's seniors. When we look at sophomores, that's a different level. When we look at 8th graders, it's a different level. And we're talking like 8th grade, we're looking at 1% to 2%. So the minority, it's the minority who drink.
If we can arm parent and caregivers with those statistics, it's an important way for them to open a conversation with their teen. So,
exactly. Because I think the other thing too is, like, I think each generation is raising the new generation, so, like, your history with drinking is going to come into how you raise your children. My history with drinking is going to come into how I raise my children. And each year we get a bit more progressive, and, you make the best choices with the information you have now, right? So I think every parent's getting a little bit better with that. So speaking of parents, we also do a survey for parents. This one I tried to make a little bit more challenging. I have a fun fact. 76% of our survey respondents historically have been women. Moms are the best, but we want to hear from dads too. Let's see if we can get to a 50-50 split. And I think this is important just because dads are 50% of the equation with parenting, so it would be nice to hear what they thought. But we ask questions on this that get to these social norms.
And we've sent that survey out to families a few times, and it's also available on the Close Community website.
It's on Facebook, it's on our website. We have it in multiple emails, but it's everywhere.
And I think, that the information that I know sometimes people feel sort of surveyed out, but when we get that information back, it helps us decide what the local solutions and strategies should be. And that's really the power of the Drug-Free Community Coalition model, is that it's local, it's community-based, and it's based on the needs of each individual community.
Right. Yeah, so this survey, for example, in this one I have a couple questions about what do you think are some of the strengths or weaknesses of Longmeadow, and you can choose what you like. And it really helps us to focus, with laser-like focus on, like, we really need to address this, because most of our respondents said they actually want to see change around this area. And maybe I identified something as I thought could be a problem, but if only 15% are saying, like, yeah, that's an issue, then it might, to me, that means this is not a timely issue. This is something that we should keep an eye on, but what they really want is for us to look at this instead.
Excellent.
And then the other thing I want to plug real quick is we also have, this is another collaboration with Shelley Warren. It's the the Longmeadow Safe Homes Network, and this is just such a lovely idea. And I was recently at a parent advisory council meeting where a father brought this up, and I thought he put it so eloquently. He has a rule with his teenage, I don't remember if it was a son or daughter, that if they're ever at a party and alcohol starts coming out, that he should call for a ride home, just because he doesn't want to put his kid in that situation. And the parent had said, it would just make my life so much easier if he didn't feel like the only kid who has been instructed to do so. And so we have things like this so that parents who have similar parenting styles, who've just made a decision that, like, I don't feel okay with underage substance use, I'm not going to allow it in my home, you can sign up for this network. And if you don't know all the families in your neighborhood yet, you can go to this network and go, oh, Melissa, for example, signed this pledge, they're on the same page as me, I feel comfortable having you go over there.
Sometimes parents need those partnerships and those supports across neighborhoods.
Because I remember I was very strict with my kids around cell phones. Nobody could get one until 14. I was a minority. It was nice to have a couple friends that were on my side, because otherwise you get tired and weak.
That's right. Any other show and tell items that you want to share, or that you have a lot going on right now?
We do have a lot going on. I guess I would like to say, if you'd like a lawn sign, reach out to me. You can reach out to me at alennox@longmeadow.k12.ma.us. The surveys on Facebook, I post it almost daily. The Safe Homes Network will be posted on Facebook. You can see it daily. You're welcome to go to our website. We have a lot of static information there, but it gives you all the information about what we do, and there's a lot of resources for parents and teens. I guess the last thing I'd like to say is, I hope everybody has a really happy and healthy summer. We know that kids are going to want to get together and socialize. Let's just try to keep it as safe as possible. And we are going to be having, the only upcoming event that we have right now is scheduled for September, because we've been trying to do more Narcan awareness and distribution. So we're going to have, and for people who aren't familiar with Narcan, I have another little handout. This is an opioid reversing medication that's super safe and saves a lot of lives. And I've been trying to talk about it more in the community, because a lot of students here go on to college, and they leave this safe little community and go out into the wider world. And if your young people are going to parties and they have Narcan, there's a very good chance that they might encounter somebody who overdoses, and it would be a great way to save a life and be a hero.
And opioid awareness is part of our health education classes at the high school, and we make kids aware of the benefits of Narcan. So that's So September we're having. Sorry, I forgot to finish my thought. Our Narcan training and distribution on, I believe it's the 29th. We're going to be right at the Long Meadow shops, and anybody can stop by. We'll give out free Narcan and give you a brief demonstration on how it's used and how to safely store it so that it doesn't go bad. All right, well, we appreciate your work. We appreciate the work of the close community, and we appreciate how you're making this community a safer one for kids. So thanks so much, Ananda, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that's it. And thank you for joining another edition of the Superintendent's Corner.